Hi everybody, my name is Freeman. Welcome to My Soul Unleashed. So today's video is the first in my gender and transition discussion series. And this series is meant to be just some discussion topics on how I view gender, things I've learned about gender, like my experience in transitioning, the reasons that I'm, exploring retransitioning, kind of a whole myriad of topics. I was gonna make a video response to some questions that came up in another video, and that's actually the reason that I started this series. So this other video is called The Real Reason That I Transitioned. But I figured I was gonna, I could sit there and talk for probably a few hours on all the different topics and the reasons why. So figured it's gonna be better to break this down into a series of manageable chunks for all of us. So today's topic is language. And I think that's, if we're gonna have any discussion on, gender and on transition and kind of start answering some of your questions, then there's really no better place to start than with language and the words that we use and the labels that we use. Because without starting there, we don't have a common jumping off point to move forward with the rest of the discussion. So I'm going to kind of see how this flows as far as time and stuff, because there's obviously a ton of things that we can talk about just surrounding language. And I want to be clear here. I'm not an expert. I don't teach this for a living or anything. I don't have a background in gender and women's studies or anything from any universities. I am just a human who went through transition, male to female transition, and have learned a lot on the way, and have learned a ton from many amazing people. And I don't speak for the rest of the trans community either. This is just my experiences, and I'm sharing them with you based on my understanding of them, the best I can. So in terms of language, that's where I think we need to really start. So before we begin that, I think my question for everybody is what is male? What does male mean to you? What does gender mean to you? What does female mean to you? What does the word man mean to you? Or the word woman mean to you? What does even the word transition mean to you? When we pause and we kind of think about those things, what do they actually mean? Now we could very easily go to a dictionary and look up these words, and there's going to be some, commonly agreed upon definitions of what those words mean. But again, those are the definitions, societally accepted definitions. Now we each have our own connotations of what a word means, and a connotation is what your interpretation of what something is, right? Because the fact is that we're all human. We all have our own experiences, so we all have different ways of understanding the world and different ways of moving through the world. So when we look at something like the word man, or the word male, or the word masculine, and we'll start there, then what does that mean? So for those of you who identify as man or male or masculine, what does identifying as a man mean to you? I don't know. What does it mean to you? I have ideas of what that means to me. For those of you that identify as a woman or a female in society, or a girl, what do those words mean to you? Why do you identify that way? So I think that's where we kind of really need to have the beginning of this conversation, is asking ourselves what words mean to us, and really thinking about that, and really thinking about how our experiences in our life have informed how we understand these concepts and these words, right? So when I look at, when we go back to, like, say, the word man, for instance, probably the first man in your life, what you call a man, would be your father, or if you didn't have a father, maybe a grandfather or a brother or a cousin or a friend or someone, right? As we move through life, we have experiences, so those quote-unquote men in our lives have their own attitudes and personalities and their own histories and their own experiences, and they act a certain way, and how we as individuals, or how you have interacted with each of those individuals, is its own unique relationship, right? So how you learned the word man, how you formulated what your idea of what a man is in the world, is based on all of those experiences, and whether we want to admit it or not, we're continuously having those experiences. So really our ideas of these things, when we think about them, they change and they shift over time, right? And this is true for all of us. So, and I know for me, being obviously more acutely aware of gender and my own gender expression and kind of, what's male and what's female in the world to me, I've always, put a lot of thought into that, right? And I think one of the biggest confusing points for me throughout history was, always adapting what I felt was a man or a woman based on, this forever, all of these new interactions, right? So with every new person that I would meet and every new interaction, my definition would change a little bit. And for someone that's trans, or for someone that's really acutely aware of their gender, or confused about what's going on with themselves in terms of gender and how they identify, having that perspective constantly shift is painful. It's extremely painful, because you're always just trying to find this solid point to lift off from, but because every new interaction creates a different awareness and a different awareness to those terms and kind of what those terms mean, then you're constantly shifting, so there's no solid footing. So I have more to talk about on language, but I think for today I'm going to leave it at that. I just want to challenge everybody to think about the language that they use, and to think about what words mean to you and why they mean, what they mean to you, right? What are the experiences that formed your relationship or your interpretation with that word? And to really just challenge yourself on understanding that, just because your interpretation is one way, that doesn't make someone else's interpretation exactly the same as yours. Actually, most likely their interpretation is going to be different. And it's not just for, these words like gender and stuff, it's for every word. It's for table or book or, knife or couch or sky, right? Now, all of those are going to have within them, if we each made a list on all of these different words, if we took the word sky, for instance, and we say, okay, yeah, here's all of the things that sky means to me, right? And it could have colors and textures, and it could mean height, and it could mean composition, based on whether it's oxygen and nitrogen, like all of the things, or for someone else it could just be something as simple as, it's just there, it's just up there, right? They don't really think much about it. So if we each made like a list and just picked any word randomly and made a list of what that word meant to us, and then we start comparing our lists, there's going to be a lot of commonality, obviously, because we're using a lot of these words constantly, but there's also going to be a lot of differences, and then it's in those differences that we need to recognize that's where communication is breaking down a little bit, right? So I'll go into that a little bit more in another video, but for today, I just want to challenge you to think about the words. And if we're talking gender and transition, think about the words surrounding gender and around transition and around sexuality and what male is and female is and what straight is and what gay is and lesbian is and all of the things. And what do those mean to you, right? Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. I hope everyone has an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video.